Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, the podcast show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by the fantastic Helen Kennett. Helen is the Director of UK Government Relations at Rolls-Royce PLC. She joined the organisation in 2010, and in her role, she's responsible for the UK Government Relations, CHQ Government Relations issues, working with the regional and country directors when it comes to UK international political issues and also management of political risk. Her extensive position covers all businesses and all functions issues within the group. She was previously the head of government relations at Thales UK, where she successfully led government relations campaigns on major defence bids. Before joining Thales, Helen was public affairs manager for Railtrack and previously worked at the Engineering Employers Federation. And upon graduation in politics and law, she actually started her career in Westminster, working for an MP. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Thank you very much, Leila. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. And wow, I must say, first and foremost, an absolutely extensive career, littered with, I'm sure, many fascinating events. I'm sure as well at the moment, given the present circumstances, it's a very, very interesting time for you.
Yes, and I think that for somebody who works in government relations, the situation that we're going through at the moment really is the point at which all of the lifetime experience that you have comes to the fore. So I work for a company that has a very deep and very wide relationship with the UK government. As you say, I've been with Rolls-Royce now for 10 years, and it feels as if all of that experience is really coming to bear at what is an existential time for the aerospace industry and also for the company. So this is a very busy time in government relations. I hope it will be a very rewarding time as well, as I do my utmost to make sure that we continue with the company strategy in the UK for the benefit of everybody here.
Absolutely. And life, as you say, at the moment, has its ups and downs, and will be a time, I'm sure, that we look back on and think, my goodness, you know, we did make it through. But I know you were, I believe, meant to be at this point in time in San Francisco. Is that right? But instead are now grounded at home, like the vast majority of the country.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I was supposed to be in San Francisco on a global leaders course. And it's a 3-module course. The first one was in the States at Dartmouth College. And then the second one was in India in January, which was actually when we got the stories about what was happening in China. And the original plan for module 3 was that we were going to be going to Beijing. That changed to San Francisco because by then everybody thought that it would be a contained issue in China. And instead the plan was to go to San Francisco. But instead I'm sitting in my dining room and connecting with the world in these virtual ways.
Very good. And it is one thing, I must say, I think connecting with the world in different ways, as you say, in one sense, it does bring it home that the world is actually a very, very small place indeed. But I wonder for a moment, if you wouldn't mind, just for our listeners who perhaps don't know you as well as I do, whether we might be able to rewind the clock a little bit here, because you have had a brilliant kind of career history, and obviously starting off in Westminster, which I've often wished I was a fly on the wall, actually. So particularly very interested. But I wonder, could you talk to us a little bit about how you came to be where you are today, and maybe even some of those formative years taking some of these pretty heavyweight roles that you now do in your day-to-day life?
Sure, yeah. So I was one of those people who was always interested in politics. My family have always talked about politics around the dining room table. And so therefore it was something that was just there as part of my life. But I'm also curious about things that I don't know anything about. And my family doesn't come from a business or a private sector background, but I was just curious. And to be honest, I've just been curious throughout the whole of my life. And that's really what's kept me, I think, on top of my game, because I'm always seeking and understanding new things. So really the combination of politics, something that I knew, and business, something that I didn't know, then came together. And I was the kid who on a Saturday night would watch the politics show and the money program for those with a long memory. And I was just curious because I just didn't know the world of business. And I remember meeting a girl at school whose father ran a company, and this was all quite alien to me. My family principally worked in the public sector. So there was this sort of interest in the unknown. And then I then went to university and studied politics and law. And then I then left, and I just knew I wanted to do something in politics. I didn't really quite know what. And then I ended up working for an MP. That was actually for Harriet Harman. I was a volunteer in the 1990s. So this was before the Labour Party formed the government in 97. So it was a very heady time, working in the office next to Gordon Brown, seeing Peter Mandelson waft along the corridor. And those really were the times when I probably should have kept a diary, because there are people that you meet casually that then actually then become real policy shapers of the future. But that was the starting point of my tick in the box where I want to do something in politics. And then the wanting to do something in business was, as you said, when I went to work with the Engineering Employers Federation, which is now Make UK. And that's really where my interest in industry, my interest in business really started to take hold. And I've always held jobs in industry, and it's always been at the very heavy end of industry, not only in terms of the nature of the product, but also in terms of the issues that I've been dealing with. And government relations at Rolls-Royce really is an absolutely strategic issue that we need to manage on a daily basis at a very high level. So really, I think I'm in a very fortunate place. I've kind of got the dream job for me, and I love it dearly, which is why I'm still here 10 years on. But in terms of my personal journey, it's really all been about hard work. That I think is the thing that has struck me. I suppose it's probably a value set that I had from when I was young, that I was instilled that if you work hard, that then you then get the rewards. And that is what I've done all the way through and continue to do. And now it feels like everything that I've done really has been training for this moment to try to deal with this very existential crisis.
That's absolutely fascinating. And I think that juxtaposition between business and government is becoming ever more prevalent in all businesses and organisations, and indeed wider society. And I must say, when you were then describing in your slightly humorous way, which I love, Gordon Brown kind of wafting through a corridor in Westminster and conjuring up these kind of images, thinking, wow, I'm sure that was absolutely fascinating. Different types of personalities that you meet from different sectors, and those that go on from their rise above and kind of on their career journey almost to, like you say, be very kind of influential policymakers. I'm sure that was riveting.
Yes, and it's one of those times that even though you're working in a relatively lowly role, the skill set that you learn in that sort of environment, working directly in a politician's office, is actually something that you can refer to every single day. But it's also interesting in terms of thinking about how people move up the career ladder, to see who I worked with at the time. So one of the individuals who I worked with, he is now the head of government relations in the UK for Vodafone. Another guy now works on the FT as a senior contributing editor. So in terms of the sort of experience that you have, you know, that you start at a low level, understanding how these sorts of offices work and how the world of politics work, but it's a fantastic training ground. And in terms of the social mobility that then provided us, it then meant that we were then able to go into other positions. But that was because we'd been given the chance in the first place. And that's been something that I've always held true, and that is that everybody should be given an opportunity, everybody should be given a chance. People excel at different points in their life, and you need to look at the person that you're seeing now, not necessarily what their education is, or maybe some of the things that they have been lucky enough to experience in their life. It's what they can contribute now, and what they can then contribute into your team in the future.
Indeed. And you mentioned previously hard work, and this is something that when I'm interviewing business leaders and CEOs, it always comes up. Hard work is absolutely fundamental to getting to where we want to be. And you know, often I think it is perhaps underestimated, the amount of work and resilience and challenges often that people have to go through in order to get to those positions can be pretty extensive. And I wonder, interestingly, because you've obviously had a career that is very, very linear and gone straight up, which is fantastic. What were some of the key pieces that you learned, not only within the political environment, but I guess within the business environment, but were there any challenges for you that kind of stuck out that were real key learning points throughout that time? And I asked the question because I think there's lots of uncertainty, obviously, in the world now. There's many business leaders and aspiring business leaders and young people who I'm sure are wondering what on earth they might want to go and do. And actually, we are telling our kids and the youth, work hard. It's absolutely fundamental. But there are challenging times potentially ahead, and it doesn't come overnight. And so I wonder whether there's any kind of advice or guidance or pieces that you might be able to share from your career, from your memory that might be perhaps helpful for those that are wanting to progress their own careers.
Yeah, so I think that there are a couple of things in no particular order. I think lean into challenges. So something that I've had all the way throughout my career is that there have been challenges. And I think it comes down to how you approach those challenges. So whether you shy away from them or whether you think, actually, this is an opportunity for me to bring together everything that I know. I know that I'm not going to have the complete 100% perfect answer because this is something that I've never experienced before. But I think it's how you positively lean into challenges. And there was something actually as part of my global leadership course that I heard last year about how the role of a senior leader is whether you have a positive attitude to bad news. And that sounds like a very simple thing, but lots of people aren't always in that place. So I try to have a positive attitude to bad news. I try to think about how you can find the solution, not dwell on the negatives. So that has stood me in good stead because of the professional challenges that I've been through. So I think to lean into those challenges, to try to find a positive outcome, actually to use those challenges as an opportunity to demonstrate to yourself and to other leaders and to peers inside the company that you are there and that you are supportive. I think the other thing is around emotional intelligence. I think that the thing that is often lost in government relations is that there's a phenomenal amount of emotional intelligence. It's basically a psychology job because I'm trying to translate what's going on inside the company, translating that to my stakeholders, and then looking at what's going on in the political environment and translating that back. And that requires a lot of emotional intelligence to understand what's going on each side, what people's motivations are, what they want to get out of situations. And then you then get to the creative bit of government relations, which is how do you get the result that you want and that you need? So therefore, in my instances, how do I deliver the company strategy? How do I get there? I can't just do it in a straightforward linear transactional conversation. I'm going to have to really think quite hard about this. Think about the messaging, think about what's going to play for my stakeholders, think about the timing, think about the routes and the access. So the creativity of my job is something that I think it's very easy to underestimate. But I think it's because of all of those things that I can say that I've put in the hard work because I've really tried to triangulate it from lots of different aspects. So those are my critical take homes. And actually, so I've got another last one, which is often government relations functions are quite small. And I'm sure that the pressure that we're all going to be going under is that we're all going to be working in smaller teams, much more stressed teams. So I think it's about how you can use your resources cleverly. I know that sounds like a very easy thing to say, but how can you use others and other networks that you've got to amplify the message that you are giving? And for me, working in the government relations spaces, how do you use other people who have aligned views? So obviously the trade associations and other ways in which you can try to promote your message in a way that's less time intensive for you, but actually gets you the same result. But that again involves a bit of emotional intelligence. It involves the creativity. It involves the hard work and putting in the miles in the first place.
This is such a fascinating subject, actually, one which I could talk about all day. I think in business, certainly in government relations, as you say, creativity is absolutely perhaps very underestimated, actually, because to get to that point of getting people who all have different personalities, different viewpoints, very different organizations to that focal point, I'm sure is very, very challenging. And I must ask, actually, and this is partly, me wanting to ask my personal curiosity here, but also for others who are trying to solve challenges at the moment, whether it be aligning stakeholders or shareholders or getting people, even as a manager, onto the same page. But when you're setting out to say, look at how to get everyone onto a certain agenda point, what is the thought process that you would go through for that? You know, when you say, you know, unpicking those pieces, kind of those motivations, and emotional intelligence is absolutely key to all that, because obviously if you're not listening, you're not understanding, you're not learning how then to translate these messages back. But are there any advice pieces or tips that you give for those that have challenging individuals that they are dealing with right now, and possibly a plethora of them, as we all have people in different directions right now who are all demanding of us and our times and our resources? What would you take as you know, what approach would you take, I guess, to these kind of you know, these alignment issues, and trying to get to that final place where everyone is on the same piece of paper?
Yeah, so I think what is it that makes a trusted advisor is really, I think, at the heart of your question. And that's a combination of so many different things. But I think that the thing that we always need to do when we're trying to get somebody on side, and I've got an image in my head actually of a triangle, it's sort of an advocacy triangle. And at the bottom, in terms of the widest base layer, is education. Don't assume that people know what your issue is. Don't assume that people are going to want to be supportive. Don't make any assumptions, because those people are dealing with 101 other issues. So educating them on why your issue is important and relevant to them is such a basic thing, but I often see this overlooked, where people assume a level of knowledge, assume a level of concern, or actually, you know, assume that somebody's even going to give you the time. So you've got to start off actually by making the pitch on why the thing that you're talking about is important to them. So again, this comes back to the emotional intelligence and the psychology piece. But once you've done the education piece, then you can build up the layers so that they then become an advocate. But the thing about that advocacy triangle is that you have to do that with every single issue. And that means for me, mentally, I'm juggling lots of different issues at any given point, trying to understand where they might be on the advocacy triangle. Because once they're an advocate, it's great, job done, and then they're helping you do your job for you. But that's a constant loop that you have to go around, of the education all the way up to advocacy on absolutely everything. And as things change in your work projects, you might need to go back to the beginning again. So that is just a constant piece of work that you need to do. But I think just having good human relationships with people is so critical. And actually, for the conversation to not always be about work, to add a little bit of humanity into that conversation. It doesn't take very long. I'm not saying that it should be lip service, but I think that actually trying to be a bit human in your interactions with people means that you're going to get a better result. One thing that I think is a very old-fashioned way of dealing with issues, and I've seen this in a number of companies in which I work, and it's, to be honest, a constant battle, is let's write a letter to somebody. Well, I'm afraid that's not how effective communication works these days, you know, or actually probably worked even since the invention of the telephone, is that actually to have a conversation with somebody means that then you can explore issues and you can see where you might want to mutually go together. Letters are very transactional and can sometimes be quite a hostile way of communicating. So just think about what is the best way of communicating, what is the best way of getting your message across, and having a conversation. It's a bit old-fashioned, but actually the really interesting thing since we've been in this situation working from home is I've been on the phone all day, every day, as I think lots of people have, because we've had to triage issues in real time. To be honest, that there's no time to write complex thoughts into an email. And it's actually brought back the skill of talking to human beings again, because I think that we all sitting in our offices, you know, that we kind of count our time and count our days by the number of emails we processed and the number of hours we sit there in silence typing. That's not an effective use of time. Actually, it's better to have a conversation, people work out something, and then maybe confirm it in writing.
I could not concur more. I absolutely could not concur more. And I'm just chuckling here because I'm sure we can all think of many individuals who are judging work by email and such like, but actually critically going and stripping everything down to those real humanistic traits, and actually simply picking up the phone or getting on Zoom. You know, it's the closest we can get right now. And so,
yeah,
you know, where we can't, you know, previously absorb those kind of those emotive body language or emotive pieces that we might have felt, because a lot of this is about feeling. And when you talk about emotional intelligence, I think this is such a crucial part, not only of leadership of the future and certainly right now, but also when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I think it's very easy for individuals and even boards that I speak to still these days who say, okay, diversity and inclusion, belonging, better pass that on to HR, or actually, what have I got to say about diversity and inclusion because of XXX? Actually, there's so many things that sit below the surface level, that sit below that skin level, whether it be social mobility, as you mentioned earlier, whether it be actually looking at the, the neurodiversity, the cognitive diversity, the way people are feeling and reacting, and, even mental health, which of course, mental health and wellness is absolutely at the top of the agenda right now. But those individuals and those leaders, which I observe, actually, most of the successful leaders I have the opportunity of speaking with, are ones that have got incredibly high emotional intelligence, and I dare say more important than actually having raw skill set, because if you can't communicate and build those fundamental long-term sustainable relationships with individuals, it's very, very difficult to actually get what is required to be done. And as twee as it may sound, I do believe that business at the moment is absolutely about intelligence, but the future business and future business leaders for millennials, millennials and individuals to come is very much going to be about the heart, and very much will be about that emotional intelligence, because where we can't, and again, perhaps I'm not articulating myself here too well, but when you think of kind of, AI, and people have been saying, oh, AI taking jobs and all this kind of business. Well, the one thing that can't be replicated at this point in time, and I'm sure Alexa's getting quite good at it now, but still cannot be replicated, is that genuine want for knowledge, care, emotional intelligence, humanity, and those pieces that really fundamentally do make us people. And anyhow, I am rambling a tad now. But
I'd like to pick up on that, because the global leadership course that I've been doing, it would be very easy to see it objectively as probably like a sort of mini MBA, and that I would go along and learn all these whizzy business techniques. Actually, a major part of it is unpacking who you are as an individual, what makes you who you are, probably things that we never have time to think about. But it's so critical, because all of those things that have probably sat there hidden in your psyche for years, actually are the things that have made you the leader that you are today. But you haven't understood it, you haven't needed to understand it. And sometimes going through that process is actually quite painful, but it's really enlightening. So part of it is understanding who you are and what you can contribute. And we don't do enough self-reflection in general in life. And this course has allowed me to do that. I think that the other thing that I'd say in response to what you were saying, Leila, is about business with a purpose. I think that's really clear for the next generation. I can say that because I'm somebody in my 40s, but a business with a purpose, because people want to know that what they're doing actually is economically meaningful and societally meaningful as well. And I think that maybe one of the things that has come through this crisis is that it's very clear where companies can act with a purpose and with a social heart and business head. And I think that maybe that's going to be one of the long-term legacy issues that comes out of this. It's quite interesting. If I look at Rolls-Royce, we went through a rebranding exercise a couple of years ago, and we changed our strapline to pioneering the power that matters. So you've got the core business activity there, but it's the piece about that matters is the society piece. It's what does society consider to be important? What is our contribution to society? And that's basically a contract that the company has with our customers and with the world. And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at what business is going to be in the future.
That is a really, really excellent way to kind of encapsulate everything we've been talking about there. And fundamentally, I agree. It's it's a time where we will see businesses rise to the top, and we'll see businesses, I'm sure, unfortunately, go through challenging times and potentially to the wayside. But those that really do have that higher purpose, and they do have that, again, whether any of us ever achieve self-actualization, who knows, but having that higher purpose and having something which is far bigger than financials and kind of, some of the more materialistic pieces, actually it is the good of not only business but wider society, as you say, and doing good for future generations. And whilst we're on the subject of diversity and inclusion and have explored this quite extensively, actually, I wonder, what does diversity, inclusion and belonging actually mean to you personally?
I think what it means to me personally is really the journey that I've been on myself. And I suppose that your reflection, obviously, as I've said, of everything that you've experienced in your life. So, so I was somebody who didn't do as well at school as I could or should have done. I then really hit my stride. And so therefore, I've always been very grateful of the fact that I wasn't judged or assessed at a particular time in my life, but actually at the point at which I really started to grow and to develop and had more to deliver and offer. So that's really been my view in life, as I've said earlier on, that it's about what people can contribute, not maybe the education that they had, but what is it that they're going to be able to bring to the party now. So I suppose I've probably been a living embodiment of that, that once you're given the opportunity that you have and you then take advantage of it, then how do you build on that? Which really comes back to the hard work. It feels like I'm always proving to myself that I can do this, but actually I really enjoy the hard work. I get a great amount of personal satisfaction out of it. And what does that mean for me as a leader of my team? I'm incredibly encouraging of my team. I very much hope that they'll watch this, but I'm incredibly encouraging of my team and making sure that they have some new opportunities, albeit through formal training or education or just through experiences, because it brings more to their life, it brings more to the company. And I think also for somebody who has worked in very male-dominated companies, because I've basically been in engineering for the whole of my private sector career, that in itself has been quite an interesting experience. I've very rarely experienced sexism in the meetings I've been in. So somebody once asked me, has anybody ever said anything sexist to you in X company? And I said, to be honest, I don't know what happens when the door closes behind me when I've left the meeting. But actually, what I have experienced is a huge amount of sense of belonging in the organizations that I've worked in. And the opportunities have very clearly been there for me to grow. But I think that it's probably, especially for every woman, to make sure that they do lean into those opportunities, that they do call out anything that they dislike, because that's just not the society that we need to live in at the moment.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Not only the piece about school, which I find it always very, very heartwarming, actually hearing from leaders who are in such seasoned positions where they actually are willing to have the confidence, frankly, to share their vulnerability. It really does show the humanity that makes up that individual. I think it also shows others who are striving to become more senior and to do more within their careers. Actually, do you know what? You can do it. And just because you maybe started from a place where there was perhaps less opportunity than could have been gifted or gleaned, well, actually, it's not going to stop you. Isn't. And to hear from so many business leaders that actually maybe earlier in their career or earlier in childhood, wherever it might be, actually was quite challenging. In one way, you kind of see that it's been the fire in the belly that has pushed them on to make them get there. But at the same time, I think it gives everyone else faith that actually, whichever and whatever background you have come from, actually really trying also to stick close as well, whether it's to role models and real models and exploring, being curious, taking every opportunity, putting your hand and your head above the parapet when opportunities arise, even if it's something which is on a voluntary basis, like you mentioned right at the beginning of the conversation, taking those opportunities to learn and build upon that network, because you never know when opportunities can rise their head. And it's life's kind of wonderful with serendipity sometimes, where actually you think it's like a labyrinth. You're going in one direction and suddenly a chance meeting with someone or a conversation, an opportunity comes out of the woodwork, and you think, wow, God, if I hadn't have been in that place right then, it never would have happened.
Yeah, and I think it's also about the experiences, that you can get insights from things that you didn't think that you'd be able to get insights from. So part of the course that I'm doing, it's part lecture-based, it's part experiential. And the point of that is that you're taken out of your comfort zone into different experiences, into different places, into places that you'd never be. But actually the insights are so much richer because it's something that's completely new to you, it's completely alien. Actually, it sort of shocks you to the core. And in terms of how I sort of feed my brain, I'm constantly reading and watching things and trying to get different insights because I'm curious about the world. But sometimes you can get some really insightful things from something that you didn't really fully understand before or didn't think would be business relevant. It might be a piece of art, it might be, a song lyric, it might be anything at all like that. In fact, I was listening to the radio the other day and there was the Bob Dylan song, Times They Are A-Changing, and there was a fantastic line in it. I'm probably going to misquote it now, but it was don't criticize what you don't understand. And I thought that's just a perfect illustration of actually how you should maybe approach some things in life. It's very easy for us all, I think, especially in the business environment, for people to knock down ideas because they don't understand them, but don't criticize what you don't understand. I thought was just wonderful, and it's one of those things that just stuck with me. And yeah, so I think to just be open and curious to wherever you're going to be able to absorb new experiences, because that's what makes life interesting.
Very well said indeed. You've taken one of my questions from our lightning
Oh,
round, which
right.
we're about to head into, where I
Okay.
sometimes ask about favourite quotes. And just for a bit of fun at the end, and I know you've probably listened to some of the previous podcast shows, so we usually go into a bit of a lightning round at the end where we'll give you 30 seconds to answer each of the next questions, starting off with the biggest, actually, which is, what is your secret to success, or indeed is there one?
I think it comes down to hard work. And that's probably been personally impactful on my private life at some points, but actually I get a huge amount of satisfaction from work. I really like it. I suppose that I'm in a very blessed place because I do a job that I love. And I think that if you do a job that you love, then it doesn't feel like hard work. It probably looks like hard work to other people, and they tell you it's hard work, and they tell you that you're working hard. And yes, you are, but actually it's really a lot of fun. So I think finding a job that you genuinely love and you get great satisfaction out of means that the hard work is hard work, but it's enjoyable and it's personally rewarding.
Very wise indeed. And actually, speak to many different individuals when we talk about hard work. It does absolutely feel harder work when it is not enjoyable. And so anyone who is listening in, who perhaps is thinking about whether it be changes in career or whether it is that they're even starting at the beginning of their career journey, don't be scared to try things which are new, like Helen has said, because what is the worst that can happen? You'll eventually strike it lucky onto the thing that really does fill your heart with joy, and it is worth every moment of those things that you tried that perhaps haven't worked out. Anyhow, I'm breaking my own rule here with 30 seconds. What is authentic leadership to you?
I think it comes down to emotional intelligence. I think it's somebody who is a real human. And that sounds like a very easy thing, but actually I've come across a number of leaders, number of colleagues who aren't. So I think you've just got to be authentic. It's best to be you, because if you're you, then you just get stuff done. It's sort of like if you tell a lie in life, it's just really hard to maintain. Just be you and just trust your own instinct. So emotional intelligence in you, emotional intelligence in others. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. And who has inspired you most throughout your career or indeed your life?
That's got to be my parents. So my parents are absolutely wonderful people, and they're wonderful people because they are curious about the world. They are interested in everything. They have always been interested to talk about things, to discuss things, to have other perspectives. And they're really the people who inspired me, I guess, to have the value set that I've got. And they also work incredibly hard, but they know how to have fun too. They've got a brilliant sense of humour. And that's something that unfortunately work sort of slightly snuffs out on occasions, but it is something that as and when I can relax, I like to think that I've inherited a bit of their brilliant sense of humour.
I'm sure they're incredibly proud. And how about any favourite heroes or sheroes? Could be celebrities, even quotes, podcast series or shows, anything that you've particularly enjoyed.
Yeah, so there are obviously lots of things in life that I've enjoyed, but I think sometimes with these sorts of questions, it's worth just going with the first thing that pops into your head, because it's actually true. It's not contrived. It's not like Desert Island Discs where somebody's been overly thinking the answer. So the answer here was that I thought of Rizzo in Grease. And I haven't watched the film Grease for quite some years, but Rizzo sings a song about a relationship situation, but there are worse things I could do. And although it's in the context of a relationship, I think especially for women who are very hard on themselves in the workplace, if something doesn't go right, it's really it's really easy to beat yourself up. So I think there are worse things I could do. I have sung it in my head in the past when things have not gone according to plan. And there are worse things I could do. Yes, there are worse things I could do. I didn't completely screw up. I screwed up according to my standards, but actually it's going to be okay. So I channel a little bit of Rizzo's really hardcore, go get it attitude.
I love the film Grease, and I'm sure everyone who's listening in is now singing along in their heads. But finally, I wonder if you could go kind of back in time, as it were, and speak to the young Helen around school time, perhaps, or even anyone who is maybe at school or college or university or wherever, thinking about what they may do. I wonder, what advice might you give to your younger self?
I think I would probably be quite accepting of the fact that things don't always go right, but working hard, you'll get through them. So I'm afraid to sound like a bit of a cracked record. I wouldn't actually have changed anything. So for all the things that maybe didn't go right at school, where I didn't excel as well as I probably should have done, it probably made me the person I am today, because it meant that I just tried harder. And I've just been trying all the time ever since then. So I wouldn't change a thing, but work hard. It does pay off.
Thank you so much, Helen, for sharing everything today. It's been a joy having you on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Leila. I've really enjoyed this experience.
I'm so pleased. And by way of summary, there's been so many interesting facets of the conversation that I've had today with you. But some of the things that really stood out for me are gratitude, the real gratitude that you've shown throughout various pieces of the conversation today for being given opportunities, and actually also for really wanting to give opportunities back. When you talked about diversity and inclusion, that really struck a chord with me, actually having a wide and open view of everyone's talents, whatever they may be, and not trying to pigeonhole, I suppose, into certain different aspects, because actually there are many talents and many capabilities that we all have, and that is ultimately what makes a diverse and inclusive organization. And really trying to actually give these opportunities to others, especially given the present time, I think is absolutely critical. And as you said, perhaps, said a number of times before, really recognizing that people do develop at different speeds, and I can't remember the terminology used now, but actually we have these peaks and troughs, and that your time, whoever is listening, is coming. So if you haven't had it right now and you're thinking, well, it's easy to say, being at senior positions, look, it's not happened overnight. There are times that are going to be difficult, especially right now, but look, reach out, make sure you utilize and you harness the power of the network, make sure you do put your hand above the parapet, and do your best not to be so self-critical. And this is for men and women, but especially for women as well, because there are, as we have discussed many a time, that there is a massive disparity of females within often senior echelons of your C-suite and kind of board levels, that it is possible to get there. It is very possible to get there. But certainly first you must be kind to yourself, and you must give yourself the capability and the confidence to be able to do that. Find others around you, listen to inspirational content, read books, re-listen to this podcast, because I think it's, just talking sometimes is actually the route to giving yourself that inner confidence almost that you need, and giving yourself the creative license to believe that you can do many other things. And finally, the point about emotional intelligence, and the point about leaders of the future really having a heart and really having that emotional intelligence. If you don't have the answer all the time, don't worry. Actually, I think the power of the question, as Helen's alluded to many times throughout this conversation, is really what is key. So if you don't know, ask the question. It is by learning and absorbing that we really can flourish. So I will end on that note, and thank you again very much indeed, Helen, for being here. For those that are listening in, you have been listening to the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. My name is Leila Mackenzie Dellis, and you've been listening to the fantastic Helen today. If you would like to check out any further information online, or you need any support or have been affected at all by anything at all during today's conversation, please do reach out, and please don't be a stranger. Helen is on LinkedIn. She's very busy, so bear with her if you're trying to reach out. You can connect with Helen on LinkedIn, and you can also check out all the show notes at the end of today's show, where we'll be summarizing all of the key learnings, the lessons from this podcast today. Visit www.dialglobal.org and check out our COVID-19 support hub. You can also visit www.dialglobal.org/podcast. And as always, podcasts will be available on audio through your favorite podcast apps, Apple, Spotify, etc. And also, if you want to check out the video version, you can do online. Thanks again, Helen, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, Or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.